In this lesson, I want to take a step back into Maya, and I want to go ahead and cover how to render this and how to set it up and render it, and then correct the frames in Photoshop, and then assemble them in a program called Media Encoder. You can use anything that will take a series of frames and assemble a 24 frames per second movie. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I want to go into my render settings, and I want to make sure that I've got my wooden plane, I've got my name, number, and extension, frame padding at 4. And I want to scroll down here, and I want to delete my perspective camera. Sometimes, I know in previous versions, it would want to render both cameras, and I don't want that. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go check over, make sure everything is correct. Then I'm going to go into my project file. Now, one of the new things, I believe they started in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. If I go to my project window, I can take this and take my images folder, which is where it normally renders, and I can go ahead and set up and go to desktop and create a new folder that I'm going to call Wooden Plane. And click select. And then that creates on my desktop a folder called Wooden Plane. I'll accept that. Now when I go to images, or when I go to my render settings, it's going to put all my render frames into my user folder, desktop Wooden Plane. So I've got woodenplane.000.tif. That's what I want. Okay, so once I've done that, I'm now ready to go to render and go to batch render. Default settings are fine. I'm going to batch render and close. Yes, I want to cancel the current render job. I didn't realize I had anything rendering, but okay. So this is going to come up, and now when I tell folks, when you're rendering, anytime you're rendering, be it with a script or off the interface, you always want to check and make sure that it's rendering it's rendering the right camera, and B, that it's actually rendering. Because if you walk away from your computer while it's rendering, and it turns out it wasn't rendering the right camera, you got a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'll pause this until this first frame is done. Okay, so this is done. I'm going to go to Wooden Plane 00. I want to make sure that it's the right camera. And how do I know that this is the right camera? Well, it's what my render cam had squared away. And if I go to my perspective camera, which is the only other thing it could be, you can see at frame 1, it's looking different. It's just suffice to say that it is the correct camera. All right, so we've got that. So what I'm going to do now is, and the nice thing about this is running through the interface is you can see how long it's taking per frame. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause this and let this render. It's going to take, actually what I did is I've already rendered it, but I took it to a faster machine. It took about 12 hours. I know I'd computed in the earlier movie, I'd computed 18 hours, and for my laptop, that's probably about right, but it took 12 hours on another faster machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back, I'll get that set up, and we'll have that. We'll cover how to gamma correct. Okay, so basically 12 hours later, I've rendered all 240 of my frames, and you can see that they're dark. So now we're going to take these into Photoshop. This is really the easy way to do it. Any video Premiere or any of these that has an exposure command can do this, but we'll do it in Photoshop because it's what we've got. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, Open, and I'm going to go ahead and open. It's in the trash. I'm going to go ahead and open frame 0 out of this, and I'm going to go to Image. Actually, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create an action. I've got my Actions palette up, and I can do that by going to Window, Actions, and I'm going to click the page icon and create a new one, and I'll call it a 1.8 exposure, or gamma correct. All right, so I'm going to record that. The way it's going to be one command, and I'm going to go to Adjustments, Exposure, and I'm going to type in 0.8 like so, and you can see it pops and gets much brighter. So we'll click OK. I'm going to stop my recording action because that's all I need. I'm going to close this without saving because I don't want to expose it the same way. I don't want to expose it twice. Now, this brings up a great point. What I want to do is I want to take this wood plane folder and I want to duplicate it. Command D, or however you duplicate, because I don't want to use my frames. I don't want to use the original frames. I can always chuck this in the trash, no problem. So I'm going to go to Wood Plane, and I'm going to go to Automate Batch in Photoshop. It will give me my last gamma correct, and I'm going to go to Choose. I'll go ahead and use Wood Plane, choose that. My destination is Save and Close, and I'm going to click OK. And what will try that one more time. Actually, let me do that. Go to File, Automate, Batch. Can't be correct. Let me choose my folder. Oh, that's because I did this earlier and tossed it in the trash. There, it's going to go to Desktop, Wood Plane, and click Choose. All right, and click Open. Now what I'm going to see is I should see this one by one basically pop in, and I'll go ahead and pause this while this is going through the motions. It'll speed it up a little bit. And again, even though it doesn't look like it, it is actually making the correction. So now this took about 2 minutes, and if I go down to 18 in the Wood Plane folder, you can see that this is quite a bit lighter than 18 in the original copy. So I've got it worked. So I'm going to go ahead and delete my Wood Plane copy, and I've got this Wood Plane folder. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Adobe Media Encoder. Now this is the Media Encoder interface. It's very simple, or relatively simple. I'm going to click on the little plus button, and I'm going to click on Wood Plane, 000.tiff, and I'm going to check Image File Sequence. That's really important. Now, actually, I'm going to cancel out of this because there's one thing I need to make sure of. You want to make sure of first. I'm going to go to Media Encoder Preferences, and I'm going to go to Media, and this little piece right here may be defaulted to either 2997 or 30 frames per second. You need to change that to 24 frames per second because that's what we rendered at. If you bring it in at 30 frames per second, it's going to be a faster animation, which may work for you. I don't know. But for right now, we're going to go 24 frames per second. Click OK. And now we'll click on the plus button, and we'll do that. 000 TIFF image file sequence. Click Open. And we've got what we're going to do it as. In this case, we can go H.264 or QuickTime, and I'll do QuickTime. The default, this is actually a pretty good one, the 720p at 24 frames per second H.264 is great, but what we really want to do, I'll click on it, and I'm just going to uncheck Export Audio, and I'm going to save this. I always like to save it to the folder that I render to, and I'm going to call this 34 underscore final movie. Okay, and click Save. And that's going to put it in that folder. And I'm going to make some changes. These are just ways I like to do this. Field order is progressive. 1280 by 720 is good. Data rate. I'm going to make the data rate 12,000 because it's only a 10-second movie. And I always like, and of course I'll use maximum render quality. Estimated file size will be 14 megabytes, which is amazing. And with that in mind, let's see, effects. Do I need anything here? No. Everything's good. So I'll click OK. And when I'm done, I'll just punch the button right here, and this should compress very fast. And I will put this into the final reference file folders along with these rendered frames. And here's the final movie. Double click on this and bring it up in QuickTime Player. Press play. And this is what the final movie looks like. Okay, so basically, in this lesson we have talked about how to render this and how to make it work, and how to assemble the frames. In the next lesson, what I'm going to do finally is assemble the plane parts that we created in the previous lesson into the preform software for 3D printing.